So, I've recently created a chess engine called Ferrous. It plays chess, it sees two moves ahead, and it plays in a local environment. I'm making a huge update, which includes bitboards. It should accelerate its speed and make it more precise in its calculations. Today I'm gonna be reviewing my first game against my own engine. So, if you're interested, the game started with d4 e6. This is not the French. The French is played against e4. I decided to transpose into the French defense anyway, and we played the advanced variation with e5. Now, bishop d7 from Ferrous is the move that caught me off guard. I'm used to people playing c5. As for bishop d7, it's actually a top stockfish choice, and it already makes me play a committal decision, which ends up to be a slight inaccuracy, c4. c4 looked logical on the surface, however, it either blunders a pawn or a tempo. Because after a pawn takes c4, bishop takes c4, what I missed here is this move bishop c6, and the best move is to come back. And if I don't play it and play the most human move, which is f3, my knight on a2 doesn't support the center sufficiently, which is not the structure you want to play against the French. And if you don't recapture at all and play something like knight f3, well, then you just lost a pawn. There's something like b5. However, Ferrous is a shallow engine, so it doesn't quite exploit my inaccuracy. Play this move bishop e7. Now this time, it's clear why. Because in the French defense, as black, you want to use the e7 square to escort your knight on g6 or f5 first, and then occupy the square by the bishop. It doesn't work the other way, because the bishop has nowhere to go, and it's likely to move once again. As soon as the knight tries to go to h6, bishop takes h6 ruins the pawn structure, so that's obviously not an option. I play knight c3, and look at this. Ferrous proves itself wrong by moving the bishop once again. That's what I was talking about. After an exchange in the center, I play this inaccurate move bishop d2, trying to recapture the knight with the bishop. That's a wrong idea. I shouldn't fear the a-pawn being isolated, just play a developing move and not lock in the bishop, because the bishop is not supposed to stand between two pawns acting like a big pawn or something. It's better off on that c1 h6 diagonal. f6 with black is the move I don't quite hate as much. It tries to undermine the center. Obviously, white is never gonna take in such positions. White doesn't have to do anything crazy here. Knight f3 would suffice. And if black was to take like this, then d takes e5 and the pawn is going, the bishop is opening up, the game becomes easy for white. The plan from here is to play queen e2 after black defends the pawn on d5, push the e-pawn and open up the bishop. And there's another idea with white, since we don't have to do anything. I want you all to employ this. Queen h5. Usually a check like this is just a check, but provided that black pushed the f-pawn, g6 is forced now, and the f6 pawn is weak. So you can just come back with the queen and play against a weakness on f6. Queen e7 develops the queen, bishop e2, I prepare castling here, queen e6, short castling, queen c6. And yes, you saw it correctly. Ferrous just performed this queen maneuver. Queen e7, queen e6, queen c6 mistake. The only feasible explanation to this is probably that it saw in the heuristics that the queen stands better on c6, and it's quite clear why it's a mistake, because I have a straightforward plan here, rook e1, bringing yet another piece into the game. And the position for black becomes quite dangerous with the king in the center, because I'm threatening to move the bishop and take the pawn. I can also do it in the reversed order, and both are very malicious. Now, if I was black here, I would play knight e7 and castle short. Ferrous opts for bishop e6, and to its credit, it blocks the line. Hopefully it saw the threat and not just moved a random piece to a random square. The problem with that approach is that it runs directly into a4, and the threat is bishop b5, winning the queen. Black is already lacking some space, although defending quite well. a6, queen b3. This move queen b3 actually re-enables bishop b5, because if black was to play a lazy move, well, let's say h6, bishop b5, pinning the queen cannot move without being lost. So a takes b5, and after a takes b5, the rook is hanging and the queen is hanging at the same time. So white is guaranteed to win a rook for the bishop. So queen b6 makes less sense because you have to go and protect the king. And if you go queen d7, I just take the rook and you play like queen c8 to defend the knight. That's obviously winning for white. Unfortunately, the algorithm doesn't let me indulge the tactic by blocking this diagonal with the knight. So if I play bishop b5 now, the queen can move to b6 and black is not forced to take the bishop. So I decided to bring another piece into the game, which hasn't been doing anything, which is the rook in the corner. Rook to c1, lining up the rook with the queen. Ferrous decides to take the pawn in the center, which is definitely a mistake. Even though Stockfish doesn't mark it as one, you should not be opening the center when your king is there and your opponent's king is castled. The best move in this position is not easy to make in a real game. This is bishop b4. On the surface it just looks like it attacks the queen, but after queen b6 there's a5, and the queen on a7 is basically out of the game. I saw this idea vaguely, and to be honest, I underestimated how strong it was. However, the follow-up is something I didn't quite consider. It's either rook takes c7 right away, or knight g5 first, harassing the bishop, and then taking on c7. And I played knight takes c5 instead. Now, Stockfish gives it an inaccuracy sign. I disagree, because I'm the one who wants the board to be opened. My king is safe, his king is not, I'm ready for an attack, so I logically capture the pawn. And after knight takes c5, there is actually a win for white that I spotted from all over here. The point is that in all of the positions, the queen's protection is just an illusion, because as long as the king stands on the 8th rank, well, I guess king on f8 doesn't work, but as long as the king stands on any of these squares, the bishop on e6 is capturable, because there's always rook e1 in the end. And after bishop h5 check, if you block with the pawn, the most natural move, I just take your knight on e5, and the bishop is actually hanging here. Because if g takes h6, rook takes e6 check, queen takes e6, otherwise you lose the queen, and rook e1. Similar thing happens if knight g6, with a slight difference that you can first capture the knight, and then after recapturing, again, rook takes e6, queen takes e6, rook e1. And if the king was to move to d8, I capture the knight, the bishop is still hanging. Because if black doesn't do anything about it, I'm threatening the queen, and I'm threatening to play rook e8 check and win the rook in the corner. And I'll be up an entire piece in this combination. Ferrous, on the other hand, plays bishop c8, probably trying to complicate the position. And here I have multiple winning plans. Of course, you can take the pawn. You can take the pawn this way. The cleanest is probably to go queen a3 or queen b4. It doesn't make any difference here because you're threatening checkmate in two moves, which is queen f8 check, king d7, and queen e8 mate. So black plays bishop e6, and you just win the rook with queen f8 check. And obviously, if this knight moves anywhere, queen e7 is just checkmate. I spotted another winning plan, which is also valid. This move bishop to d2. And the point is, you have no choice but to lose the queen. I think the best move here is knight f6. And if you don't lose the queen and play queen b6 as was played in the game, you're more than welcome to pause the video right here and try to find a checkmating combination. And if you said rook e8 check, king d7, queen h3, king d6, bishop f4, or instead of king d6 you can go queen e6 and lose to queen takes e6 checkmate, you are right. Any other queen moves lead to quite the same checkmate, so nothing can save black here. And this is a perfect example of such a nice board symmetry. How one move, which is bishop d2, orchestrated three ideas. Attack on the queen, repositioning the bishop on a better diagonal, and opening up the third rank for the queen. And later, it ended up being a key idea that led to checkmating attack. Obviously, I wouldn't be myself if I didn't forget to include the results of the game, so you can kind of see them on your screen right now. The percents, the amount of inaccuracies, mistakes, and blunders, centi-pawn loss, whatever Lichess analysis offers. And if you want more videos of my games against Ferrous, you can write down a comment below, and of course suggest your own ideas. You're more than welcome to do so.